nope, I'm not going to take that little enticing bit of dopamine that's on Facebook by refreshing or like training my brain to do this on TikTok. Like, I can't. So I have to set boundaries with myself. That's why people hire me
Yeah.
because it's just so daunting.
Good morning and welcome to In the Know with KO. I'm your host, Kristen Adams, also known as KO. And today I am bringing back an incredible guest, Kayla Keisha, because there's always something super awesome to talk about with Kayla because she is a young adult who is a plethora of knowledge. And today we're going to focus on her wellness journey because I think there's a lot of really important things to talk about. But before we get into that, if you didn't hear the previous episode where I had Kayla on the show, let me tell you a little bit about how we met and who she is. So, we met because her mom and I are friends. So, yeah, her mom and I are the same age, and we both have adult children who are the same age. And when I met Kayla, I just absolutely fell in love with her when she was a kid. I've watched her grow up into an incredible, very inspirational young adult. And that's why I want to bring her on the show because we have a lot of relatable, special stories that I want y'all to be in the know about. So, with that said, I want to also tell you she is a virtual assistant. She has her own business. So if this is something you're looking for, we'll make that available to you. She is KK, your go to VA. She's also a certified yoga instructor, and she is an incredibly talented musician, lead vocalist, and aspiring country artist who recently relocated to the Nashville, Tennessee area. So, with that said, Kayla, thank you for joining me again, and good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Kristen.
I'm so excited to talk about your wellness journey. But before we jump into that, you know I've got to have a little rapid fire fun.
Bring it on.
All right. I love it. All right. French fries or onion rings?
French fries,
Soup or salad?
salad,
Chocolate or vanilla?
vanilla,
Burger or pizza?
pizza,
Sweet or salty?
salty,
Smoothie or shake?
smoothie.
Excellent. Okay. So I kind of led off with the whole food topic because it's extremely relative to your wellness journey and what I think we can potentially educate some of the listeners on. Um, it's always so fun to chat with you. I feel like we could go on and on for hours, just like I do with your mom. Like your mom and I always be like, "Oh, we're gonna just get together really quick or talk really quick," and 6 hours later, we're like ordering takeout because we've run out of time. But I always love talking with you, and I think you have something so special to share, not just because you are a young, aspiring professional in her early 20s, but because you've experienced things in life that you have learned something from and you've developed your own path. And I think there's something to be said about that. When when you look at the difference in generations, I always think it's so fun not to compare, but to kind of to look at those differences and open some discussions. So, what is something that Gen Z gets right that my generation could learn from?
What is something that Gen Z gets right? Uh, I know I keep talking about AI and technology, but I feel like it's just so prevalent right now. Maybe because I'm doing the virtual assistant work, it's become my life. But I think it's just this openness and willingness to maybe try new things, be open to new technological advances and how it's kind of carrying the world.
Mhm.
We talked about that in our last episode, but I feel like, what do you think about that?
I think you're right. I think that's actually a perfect segue to, even a wellness journey, right? Because I think that we have to be willing to learn new things, but also be open to changing them. Now, anyone who knows me knows I keep a paper calendar. My planner is in it's in writing. I use pencil because I'm constantly erasing and moving things around. And I'm also juggling. We have multiple businesses. I have my schedule, my husband's schedule, our children's schedule. And now, our middle child, she has a job and, she has stuff with school. And, even my adult son who doesn't live at home anymore, he's your age, he still has stuff sometimes that's on the calendar that's important, like he had surgery recently or like whatever it is. I want to make sure I'm aware, right? And I'm tracking all that. But I do think that people laugh at me because they're like, "Oh, how come you don't just use your digital calendar?" Well, truth be told, I've tried and it was an epic fail. Every time I tried to transfer the information, I was forgetting things. I was late for things, which, if you know me, that's a huge pet peeve. I never want people waiting for me, and I never want to make other people run behind because of my tardiness. So I've always prided myself in being on time and getting my kids to try their best to be on time. But I think I really want to challenge myself maybe in my 49th year as I roll on my birthday soon. I think that maybe I'll challenge myself to embrace the idea of that digital technology. But I think you're right. There's so many things. And the fact that you are now a working professional as a virtual assistant is a testament to that, because I don't think the word virtual assistant was very popular 10 years ago. Am I right?
Oh, yeah, people still don't know what a VA is, so, um, yeah, it's kind of the direction we're headed. I mean, everything is turning virtual now, um,
Do you think a lot of that
and
has to do with COVID, or do you think it's just because of transfers in technology?
I think it's all of it. I think it's the convenience factor too, and listen, like, I'm very old school when it comes to writing music. I cannot write without a pen in my hand, touching the paper, because typing on a computer is just, it's not it. Like, I feel like writing, it's something our ancestors have done since the beginning of time. It's in us, and I don't want us to lose that either. Like, that you can go overboard with it, and it's learning the balance.
Yeah. No, I think
Um,
that's really important, and I also think that that's probably why I stay so, like, well versed with my schedule, because I have so many different things going on. It's not just my schedule, right? I think that, and even the dogs, like the dogs have veterinary visits and stuff. They get groomed, and like, so there's a lot of different things that I keep track of, and I do want to challenge myself to do it better. But then there's also the part of me that's like, why am I going to fix something that's not broken, right? But
True.
I don't know. But then it's kind of scary to me to put it all into the digital world, because I'm like, what if the power goes out? What if I don't have internet where I'm at? Am I still going to be able to access what I need? Like, that's kind of the part that scares me a little bit. Like, but then there's the part where, how we were talking in the last episode about like some of the shame of like not going to college. I feel technology shame. Anybody else feel technology shame? Like, I feel technology shame when I'm out with my friends or at a meeting somewhere. Everyone does this. They pull out their phone. They're like, okay, so are you guys available on this day and time? And I'm sitting there. I'm like, I'll have to get back to you. I don't have my calendar with me. Like, that's what I mean. Like, why should I feel shamed? I have a system that works for me. It's not failed me yet. Hello.
Yeah, it's technology as a whole. It's such a multi-layered topic. There's so many different things. It's like talking about phone addiction, for example, and how most people have it, and we're not willing to just say, like, yeah, I can't live without my phone. But it's also like our lives are almost dependent on our phones too. It's really,
It's so unhealthy. Like, and as we're gonna jump into some wellness stuff today. Here's a
yeah.
perfect example of how out of control we are with our phones as a society. And this just clicked when we said it, because it's happened to me so many times. When we reserve a table to go out to eat, we don't do this often. Like, when nice occasion, we want to head out, go out and eat. There's an app, Open Table, I use, and I book a reservation. And sometimes I'll use it to invite other people, or at least secure the table for us, so we know we're going at this place. We've got a table, right? When you arrive at the restaurant and you check in with the host or hostess, the first thing that happens is my phone sends me a message that recognizes that I'm now at a restaurant about to have dinner, and it suggests to me that I should put my phone in do not disturb mode. How sad is that?
See, that's creepy. That is so, I know. I mean, like, it's just going to keep developing, so there's no stopping that. We can't just,
But it
I don't
goes
know.
to show you how unhealthy we are with our technology, like that people they're so prone to be rude to the people. I can't stand that. Like, if I decide I want to
Yeah.
treat myself and get a pedicure somewhere, I cannot stand that the person sitting next to me is holding their phone on speaker, having this whole conversation, or watching after episode on TikTok or whatever they're watching. I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, could you just quiet down? I'm trying to relax." It's like, it's so unhealthy that people are so tied to that technology. It's also not healthy because their brains and their physical body is like hunched. Oh, like there's so many parts of that that make me crazy. And I love that in our last episode you touched on this, but I'm sure it's relative to today's episode as well, Kayla, that you have to have that discipline to break away from technology and have that quiet time of reflection, whether it's meditation, yoga, take a walk, read a book. Am I right?
I was just gonna say that, yes. Um, Technology is my job. So I'm around these, I wanna say, addictive platforms all day, and if I didn't have the discipline in my brain to be like, "Nope, I'm not gonna take that little enticing, bit of dopamine that's on Facebook by refreshing," or, like, training my brain to do this on TikTok, like, I can't, so I have to set boundaries with myself. That's why people hire me,
Yeah.
because it's just so daunting. They need to offload it to someone who has the strategies and the organization to kind of be like, okay, this is how we're going to systemize the back end of your business.
Well,
Takes an
that
incredible
makes
amount
good
of discipline.
sense. That makes very good
Yeah.
sense to me. And I think, having the discipline is important. And if I had to guess, knowing so much about your story and your history, that stems from having to make very mature decisions and be responsible at a young age. What we're going to jump into now has to do with your wellness journey and how that really was sort of, I don't want to say kick-started, but you were really shoved into having to acknowledge your health was not good. Uh, what age were you diagnosed, and can you share your diagnosis?
Okay. Yeah. I was 14 years old. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and my life changed in an instant.
It's that's I mean, that's a very young age. There's so many things developmentally that you still have to get through, and it's also so tough because you're in the midst of, relationships and school. Like there's so many social things going on in your life. What was the moment you realized this was not just a tummy ache?
Um, so I looked in the mirror and I realized I didn't look myself anymore. It was also how I felt, but my eyes were sunken. I was losing hair. The color of my face was drained. And everybody was just, they thought it was like a tummy ache, something. I don't know, because it lasted a few weeks until I was like, "No, I need medical intervention, and I don't wanna willingly just admit myself to the hospital, but something is wrong, and I know it." I had the gut feeling, like, literally and figuratively, that something was way off.
Yeah,
Um,
wow. To say you had a gut feeling and to have that type of diagnosis, that is serious.
mhm,
And then
yeah,
when I remember, your mom talking about this even before I was as close to you at the time, but I remember your mom talking about it. And, from the parent's perspective, it was terrifying to think that there was something going on beyond her control. And, for those of you that are listening, you live with a mom growing up who was all about wellness. She literally is part of a huge wellness company. She has non-toxic cleaning products. Like she was not afraid to jump in and give you what you needed, and step up, obviously, as your mom. But you had to have surgery, didn't you?
yeah, I had a surgery that I believe saved my life. I had a bunch of scar tissue in my small intestine, my ileum. Um, and I just couldn't stomach food anymore. I was living on liquid IVs, and I couldn't do the 3 weeks in the hospital anymore. At that point, I had dropped out of school. I was weak, and I needed a wheelchair. And my mom would come in with all her lotions and potions in the hospital, and the nurses would come in and be like, "Is that a diffuser? That smells really good. This peppermint lavender."
Yeah. See, I
Yeah.
mean, so it wasn't just the TLC that you were getting from your mom. There was a lot of wellness that she was introducing you to so you could see how that could help bring you to another level, whether it was relaxing, soothing, getting into your bloodstream and your joints and the tissues. Because here's another relatable moment between us, Kayla. This is so incredible. When I was in my 20s, I went through a really tough relationship and it caused a lot of stress on my body, and my digestive system literally shut down.
Mhm.
I was diagnosed with something called gastroparesis, which is the immobility of the stomach muscle. So I was basically poisoning myself every single day. I would wake up feeling like I had a stomach bug or food poisoning every single day because my body wasn't releasing the toxins and the things that you're supposed to flush out through your digestive system. And I lost like 40 pounds of, and it was not healthy at all. And it was kind of the same thing. Like the people who loved me started to see something was wrong. And it took several years of treatment, different food and drink changes in my diet, exercise, and I eventually got on the healthy path. But it also was making a lot of replacements in my life. What type of changes did you have to make to overcome that part of your life of having Crohn's? I mean, obviously the surgery was the immediate fix, but that was just one step, right? What other changes did you have to make, Kayla? What did you do?
So I think staying in remission for any kind of autoimmune disease, it's really important that there's like upkeep and you are staying disciplined. So I'm always very intentional with my food choices. I'm intentional even with who I surround myself with and my stress levels and what I'm willing to take on. Like I have very firm boundaries with myself and I have to. I don't overwork myself. Like the whole hustle culture thing, I honestly think it's BS and I don't think it's necessary. And we're becoming sicker because we believe that's the way we need to operate. And
Amen
you
to
can
that.
actually,
Amen to that.
yeah, you can attract way more by just by doing less and trusting yourself and trusting your body. So, with the phones, we are so distracted by how we're feeling in the moment, physically, mentally, what could be going on. You turn off the signs until you get some dis-ease in your body. It has to get to that point for most people in order for them to see, oh, this was a red flag that I was ignoring. My intuition was right. So when I talked in the last episode about having a firm morning routine, I do that too. It's not just like woo woo. It's to keep my hormones in balance, it's to lower the cortisol levels, and self-care is number one. So I don't even believe in diets and stuff because I can eat something and immediately know if my body is rejecting it or it's nourishing me.
And if it, not for anything, I think that having those healthy boundaries is absolutely critical in personal relationships, in work, in the amount of work that you are willing or not willing to take on. You're right, because when I made those shifts in my life, that's when I started to feel better. And it took years for me because there was such significant damage done. It was so bad that they said, if this medication that they gave me didn't jumpstart my digestive system plus making some of these other changes, they were going to have to put a pacemaker in my stomach to actually make it flex and flush things out. Like how crazy is that? I mean, and and it wasn't anything to do with a food sensitivity or an allergic reaction. It was 100% stress related.
Yeah, I think most diseases are, but we're getting there with conventional medicine. And I think we should celebrate all of it. Like conventional medicine, I believe, saved my life in tandem with the other practices that I did that I wasn't told to do. I very specifically remember a doctor telling me that if I rejected taking methotrexate, which is a form of chemotherapy, that I would die. And he looked at me square in the face and said it. My parents were in the room, and I stopped the protocol anyways. And I did it, and um, I found some relief. I started having more flare-ups. The flare-ups were coming and going at this point, at the end of my Crohn's journey until I got the surgery that saved my life. But I stopped medications for a while because it was putting a band-aid on the problem, I believe, and then I was experiencing a bunch of other side effects that I didn't want. Like I didn't want my hair to be falling out and have clumps of hair missing, or just I was like raging my hormones, my emotions. I couldn't do it anymore. And I followed these protocols for 2 years until I started to take matters into my own hands, and I was like, "Okay." I started reading every book I could. I reached out to holistic doctors, and it just all started coming together. And actually, at the point where I got surgery, I was doing pretty well. It was kind of the decision to just be like, maybe I want to take out the scar tissue and see what happens because um at that point it was just staying stable and then I'd have these little flare ups, then staying stable, little flare ups.
Yeah.
So
You're right, though.
my gut,
Advocating for yourself is a tremendous part of not just the healing, but that future remission. It's that future wellness. And you have to be willing to have whatever combination of things works for you. And I agree because again, another moment of similarity in our lives. The first GI doctor that I went to wanted to put me on a prescription medication that when I did the research, I realized it crossed the blood-brain barrier, and it was like all these scary side effects, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this sounds terrifying," and put me on this special diet, and I asked a lot of questions. I then took matters in my own hands, and I'm like, "Something has to change. I'm still not feeling better, and that medication is terrifying." So I went and got additional opinions, and I found a doctor that was more interested in the root cause. So let's jumpstart and fix the problem, which did require a medication, but it was a different one altogether, and it required a different diet. So good thing that I advocated for myself the way you did, because the first doctor
mm,
I went to, it was the wrong diagnosis, wrong medication, wrong diet. So, I'm like, it didn't seem right to me. I was like, I'm not going to just take their word for it, and I'm not against, it's not Eastern medicine versus Western medicine. I agree with what you said, that there's a time and a place for each of them. And I love marrying them together to get the best benefit.
yeah, I agree. I think it's you've got to trust your body, right? Because your body is your body, and we're taught, I feel, to just like put our lives in the hands of someone else, which, yes, they went to school for it. And I'm not taking away from doctors, nurses, like they are the heroes of the world. But also you have to listen to yourself and know, okay, maybe just because they're saying that I should do this, well, I'm going to go do some research and let you know.
Yeah.
So I didn't put my faith 100% into someone. And, some people might disagree with that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's what I needed to do. And that's what my gut told me to do. So that's what I did.
No, you're right. And some people may agree, but I also, again, the hopes here is to bring people in the know and remind you you're allowed to advocate for yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
And, my older son, he just had surgery again. He's had a few injuries, sports injuries over the last few years. And it's interesting that after the surgery, and thankfully none of them were like major surgeries, but what's interesting to me is each time he had the surgery, they automatically gave him prescriptions for things that he actually never asked for or needed. And so the reason I'm sharing this is I'm not saying you shouldn't take pain medication or anti-nausea medication or any of those things when you have surgery. But here's the thing. Both times he had the surgery, they gave him an addictive narcotic that he ended up never taking, didn't need it. He took ibuprofen and he was fine. They gave him anti-nausea medication, didn't take it. He didn't need it. Gave him something for this, something for that. Didn't take it. He didn't need it. He listened to his body. And I remember going toe to toe with a nurse at the hospital even because she was suggesting that I wasn't caring for my child because I wasn't willing to give him pain medication. And my husband had to kind of intervene a little bit because I was going to end up in like hospital jail. But I was like, no, I said, if he needs it, we'll get him what he needs. Why would I fill a prescription for Percocet when he's not even like in that much pain? Like that's the problem. That's the problem, that here's prescriptions. We're going to just give these to you, whether you need them or not. And then, like you said, but all the side effects. So now you're recovering from surgery. You're taking an addictive medication that you probably didn't even need. And now you've got digestive problems. And now you can't sleep. Now you can't eat. You're not getting nourishment. It's like that vicious cycle. So Kayla, kudos to you for cooperating with the medical team, right? And you're right. The doctors and nurses that are out there grinding on the majority of them really are heroes. The majority of them really are angels on earth. And I'm curious because you really had a very intense diagnosis and a very serious surgery. When you went through all of that, was there a powerful moment with a specific medical staff member that you can recall?
Yes, there was, and I'm blanking on her name because she only worked like 2 shifts with me before I transferred to Nicholas Children's Hospital in Miami.
Mm.
Um, but she was beautiful, spiritual woman who always had a deck of cards and it had like an affirmation um, from I can't remember if it was from the Bible or just like, you know, affirmations about God and believing in something bigger than yourself, especially, as children, on the children floor, you lose a lot of that. Um, maybe I want to say innocence when it's like you're hit with such a big illness, disease where your life is threatened.
And it
And
can be
she was,
depressing too because it takes you away from all of the things that you know and love, your creature comforts, your family, your friends, your school, right?
yeah, definitely. I felt so isolated, but she came in once or twice and gave me these cards and was just like, remember why you're here. Just, step into that. And you're going through this for a reason. And she would hold my hands and was just like my fairy godmother.
That's
Amazing,
awesome.
amazing woman. So I have the deepest respect for the nurses that were with me, especially because at that time I was very ashamed of how I looked and what I was going through and felt like such a loser. And I didn't want anyone to see me. People wanted to visit me all the time, even my parents. I was like, no, I just need to be alone.
Well,
So the
that's
nurses were like my
awful.
mothers
Oh my gosh, that's
and
awful.
fathers.
See,
Yeah.
that's especially, as a young girl, maybe, boys don't necessarily care about that as much, but there's something, about girls, we want to feel beautiful and we want to feel accepted. And when you don't, I know for me, even if I'm at home battling a common cold, I end up feeling depressed and sad and withdrawn because it's not just FOMO as much as it is I feel heavy. It's kind of, I shouldn't say depressed. I don't think that's the right word. I have like a heaviness and it weighs on me. So, and that's as an adult. So, like you said, as a kid, that's I think where a lot of your resilience probably stemmed from. And you not only came out of that, Kayla, but you've learned to manage it with all of the self-discipline. I'm curious though, now that you are living a very different lifestyle, what is your comfort food that you actually can't eat? Is there anything?
Um, Probably dairy, but you know what? Like I can eat everything pretty much now. I just choose not to eat certain things because outside of like flare-ups and Crohn's and stuff, I don't even really get those anymore. It's just I like to take my health into my own hands and feel the best I possibly can. And it's like an act of self. It's an act of self-love. It really is choosing the right foods.
Oh yeah. I
Um,
always tell people pay now or pay later because, in life, what you do for your body at a young age is 100% going to impact your older years. And I'm really grateful that I at least caught things when I did. So I was able to make really significant changes. So I feel like your generation is actually learning even more about that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that still vape and do other things that are probably like causing them to go the other direction, right? But I still think you guys have a lot more knowledge than we had in my generation because my generation invented processed foods.
it's amazing too because yes, there's so many processed foods, but even in the case of dairy, like there's so many dairy alternatives now. We have oat milk, almond milk. Like it's never been easier to eat healthy because it's all just there and the
Yeah.
education is there.
That's true. You're right. And I think that it's also this is the benefit of some of the social media stuff that we have, right? Because like there's so many people that I follow on like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook that they're sharing all of these great nuggets of information. And I love that you even share a lot of really inspirational things too. It's a combination of, mind and body. And I think that it's a wild ride, and I think that, if we embrace it, we can joke around a little bit about it, then it does help not to make light of a situation, but I personally choose joy in every situation, even when it's hard, even when it's the most challenging time of my life. I find a way to smile through it and either give back or do something nice. It's my way of filling my cup, and that's what works for me.
Mm.
And I'm curious now. I love all these curious moments that we're sharing because a lot of it is really connecting with some people listening. I'm sure. Um, do you have any wild medical terms or nicknames you've given your intestine?
No, I've never thought of that. Have you thought of this because you wrote the question?
No, I was just curious. Like I mean, people go through these journeys. I'm like, I've not experienced something like that intense. I didn't have to have surgery, thank God, but I was just curious. I'm like, oh, okay, just thought I'd throw that one out there for a little laugh. Um, so I know you're a huge advocate in the wellness world, and I love seeing the way that you do that. I would love to know, what would you tell someone, Kayla, who feels like their body is betraying them?
Okay, so I think your body can never betray you because as long as you have a body, you're alive. And I know that this question has a lot of layers to it because I've been in that before and I understand. But as long as you are breathing, technically you still have a little bit of health in you. And it takes that one spark of belief and gratitude and it's a leap of faith. But seeing yourself as healed, you know, and almost I think it's not being a victim to what's happening to you, but embracing like, okay, yes, this has happened, but where can we go from here? What's the goal? Because again, as long as you have that desire, it's there for a reason. If you have the desire to get better, if you're ill, that's the journey right there. And I believe we can tap into that at any time. Um, but again, like there's a lot of layers to that. It's it's all about what you believe. There's actually I listened to Tony Robbins the other day, and he said, "We can have and do anything. The only thing that stops us really is our psychology."
It's
I
very
was like, "Dang
powerful. The power of positivity is an incredible thing. And I will tell you, for me, my issue, like I said, it completely derived from anxiety and stress. And so when I was able to get past that, I found myself in improved health. And then I went a step further with not dieting, but changing what I was filling my body with, changing, the sources of where my food came from and how I was preparing it and implementing different exercise routines. And I made some really big lifestyle changes. And that's ultimately, where the rubber met the road for me. And I think that if your intestines could talk, they would thank you for acknowledging their important existence. But I also think that they would feel empowered by the love you gave them and your willingness to heal them. Would you agree that your intestines would feel this way?
I would agree. And with all the science that's coming out about your gut being your first brain now, I mean, that is like the relationship that I have to my stomach. I mean, that your digestive system is everything. Um, so it's how you eat, it's how you manage your hormone levels and your stress. It's, maybe choosing a kombucha with probiotics, taking your probiotics, like all these things. Um, I think I needed that experience is so intense as to have a knife surgically remove part of my intestine to be like, this isn't the way I want to do this anymore. Like there has to be another way.
No, because how
And
many parts of your body are you going to be able to remove before you don't have any left, right? I mean, that's not necessarily you like you said, that was a really good jump start to getting yourself on the
mhm.
right path, but I think it's great that you acknowledged all of those things, and I'm so grateful that I was able to bring you on the show again for another chat to share and bring people in the know about wellness and how it doesn't have to completely take you down, how to harness all of that, how to embrace it, how to change it. And Kayla, do you have any parting words for anyone out there who either is struggling with Crohn's disease or has a loved one struggling with Crohn's disease? Do you have any parting words that you'd like to share, whether it's helpful, inspirational?
Well, if you need someone to talk to, please reach out because that journey was very lonely for me. Um, and I know it's hard right now, but just keep the faith because, again, as long as you are breathing and you can see out of your own two eyes, you still have a glimmer of health within you. So focus on that, being grateful for that. What you focus on expands. And I'm your support. So I just want to keep a vessel open for people to reach out.
Thank you so much for that. And to everybody listening today, I want to say thank you so very much again for being in the know with KO. Thank you to Kayla for being such an inspirational part of my journey as well. I hope you learned not just about Crohn's disease, but how to advocate for yourself because this wellness journey isn't going to get any easier by having other people tell you how to do it. Listen to your body and figure out what works best for you. So I hope this episode was super helpful. Thank you for listening. Please like it, share it, comment, and continue to be in the know with KO. Thank you.